In the grand palace of Lythris, high above the clouds of the peaceful planet, Princess Illyra stood in front of her mother, Queen Xylyra, feeling both confused and angry. The opulent room, decorated with silver tapestries that shimmered like stars, seemed to calm for the storm that was brewing inside her. Ylira, a young alien princess with shimmering violet skin and eyes that sparkle with intelligence, was used to being in control. As the future ruler of Lythris, she was raised with the expectation that she would make decisions for her people, decisions that would ensure their safety, prosperity, and place among the stars. But today, her mother had told her something she wasn't ready to hear. "You will marry a human." Illyra, Queen Xylyra said, her voice calm but firm. Illyra's heart raced. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Humans, the primitive species from Earth, the very species that had been the subject of ridicule and dismissal in the galaxy for centuries? She opened her mouth to protest, but her mother raised a hand, silencing her before she could speak. "This is not a choice, Illyra. This is a command," Queen Xylyra continued, her tone unwavering. "The humans have proven themselves to be unexpectedly strong, resourceful, and adaptable. Their growth in the galactic system is undeniable, and we need an alliance with them to secure our future." Illyra's mind spun. How could this be happening? Her people, the Litharians, were the most advanced in the galaxy. They controlled technology that was centuries ahead of anything the humans could even dream of. Their society was peaceful, intelligent, and graceful. Humans, on the other hand, had only recently discovered space travel and were still figuring out how to avoid destroying their own planet. Yet here her mother was, asking her to marry one of them. "You're asking me to marry a human? Are you serious?" Illyra asked, her voice rising with disbelief. The queen met her gaze. Her eyes filled with an ancient wisdom that Illyra had always admired. But today, that wisdom felt like a heavy burden. "I'm asking you to do what is best for our people." "Illyra," Queen Xylyra replied, "the galaxy is changing. The alliances that kept us safe in the past are no longer enough. If we do not adapt, we risk falling into chaos. The humans have a strength we can no longer ignore. Their ability to survive against all odds, to find solutions when all seems lost. This is what we need." Illyra shook her head. "But why me? Why do I have to marry one of them? I'm not some political pawn to be used in your games." The queen's eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. "You are the heir to the throne, Illyra. Your marriage will seal our alliance with Earth. It will ensure that our people remain strong, and that strength will come from the bond between you and the human ambassador. This union will symbolize the beginning of a new era." Illyra felt a wave of frustration rise within her. Her mother was so certain, so focused on the greater good, that she couldn't see what it was asking of her. Illyra had spent her entire life preparing to be a ruler of Lythris, not a figurehead in an arranged marriage to someone she didn't even know. She had her own dreams, her own ambitions, and none of them involved becoming the bride of a human. "This is absurd," Illyra muttered under her breath, more to herself than to her mother. "I'm supposed to marry a human because it's good for our people? And what if I refuse?" "What then?" The queen didn't flinch. "Refusing would have consequences. You know that. As the future queen, you are expected to put your people first. This marriage will protect our future, and the future of Lythris." Illyra clenched her fists, frustration and anger swirling within her. She had always respected her mother, but today, she felt as if she was being asked to abandon everything she had ever believed in, for the sake of a political game, a game she didn't want to play. "I will not marry someone I don't even know," Illyra said, her voice trembling with emotion. "This is not what I was prepared for. I've trained for years to rule Lythris, not to be some political tool." Queen Xylyra's expression softened, but there was no sign of wavering. "Illyra, I know this is difficult for you, but sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that secure the future. This union is not just about you. It's about the survival of Lythris, and your role in that is crucial." Illyra could feel the weight of her mother's words pressing down on her. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She was the future queen, and as future queen, She had to think beyond her own desires. Her people depended on her. But did that mean she had to sacrifice her happiness? A sharp knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Your Highness," came a voice from outside. "The human ambassador has arrived." Illyra's heart skipped a beat. So, the human was already here. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready to meet the man her mother had chosen for her. Her mother gave a small nod. "It's time, Illyra." The princess stood there for a moment, staring at her mother, struggling with her emotions. The queen's expression was calm, unreadable, as if she had already made peace with the decision that was now forced upon her. Illyra took a deep breath, her mind racing. She wasn't ready for this. She had never thought her life would turn out this way, marrying a human, for the sake of political strategy. But what choice did she have? Her eyes met her mother's, and for the first time, Illyra felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. Could she do this? Could she marry a human and play her part in this strange, new future her mother had planned? The doors to the chamber opened, and Illyra was greeted by the sight of the human ambassador. He was tall, with dark hair and a confident posture that immediately caught her attention. His eyes were kind but sharp, and there was a quiet strength in the way he carried himself. This was the man her mother had chosen for her, the man who would become her husband. Illyra felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, confusion, but also something else, something she didn't fully understand. There was no way to know how this would end, but one thing was clear: her life and the future of her people would never be the same. Illyra stood frozen at the entrance of the chamber as the human ambassador stepped forward, his confident stride cutting through the tension in the room. His presence seemed to fill the space, and for a moment, Illyra was taken aback. The human wasn't what she expected. He wasn't the awkward, stumbling creature she had imagined. No, this man had an air of authority about him, one that made her pause. His eyes, dark and intense, met hers as he offered a slight nod in greeting. "Princess Illyra, it's an honor to meet you." Illyra's mind raced. This was the man she was supposed to marry? He looked ordinary. He was tall, with short, dark hair and a plain, yet handsome face. His clothes were simple but well-made, a far cry from the intricate robes of her people. But there was something else, something that set him apart from every other human she had ever heard of. A quiet strength in the way he stood, a calm that contrasted with her own rising storm of emotions. "Ambassador Ethan," Illyra responded coolly, though her voice betrayed a hint of surprise. "I expected someone different." Ethan raised an eyebrow but didn't seem offended. "I'm sure you did, Your Highness. Most people do." Queen Illyra, who had been standing silently beside her daughter, smiled faintly. "Ethan, this is my daughter, Princess Illyra." "Illyra, this is Ethan, the human ambassador." Illyra tried not to let her frustration show. She wasn't here to be polite. She wasn't here to entertain the idea of this human being a part of her life. Her mother's insistence on this marriage made no sense. Why a human? Why this particular man? "I understand this is a difficult time for you, Princess," Ethan said, his voice calm, almost soothing. "But I assure you, I'm here to help, not to make things harder." Illyra didn't respond immediately. She wasn't sure what to say. She had spent her life being trained to rule her people, to be their future queen. She had never imagined that her duty would involve marrying a human. Yet here she was, standing face to face with the very person who, according to her mother, held the key to Lithra's future. "You must think us foolish," she said finally, unable to hold back the bitter edge in her voice. "My people have thrived for centuries without any help from Earth, and now, suddenly, we need an alliance with humans?" Ethan didn't flinch at her words. Instead, he seemed to consider them carefully before replying. "I don't think you're foolish, Princess, but I do think you've underestimated humanity." Illyra's eyes narrowed. "Underestimated? How could I possibly underestimate a species that only recently figured out how to send ships into space?" Ethan's expression remained unchanged, though a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "You're right. We haven't had the luxury of millennia of peace and advanced technology like the Litharians. But what we've learned, what makes us strong, is our ability to adapt, to survive when everything seems against us. Illyra wasn't sure what to make of this. She had heard about humanity's recent rise, their unexpected success in navigating galactic politics. But to her, they were still a young, impulsive species. How could they possibly offer anything of value to her people? You speak as if humans are invincible, Illyra said skeptically. But you are no different from any other species in the galaxy. You will fall, just as many others have before you. Ethan didn't argue. Instead, he stepped closer to her, his voice soft but filled with an unshakable conviction. Maybe we will fall, Princess, but it won't be without a fight, and that's something you might want to consider. In this galaxy, survival isn't about being the most advanced, it's about being willing to keep going when it seems impossible. And that's something humans understand. Illyra felt a flicker of something deep inside her, a quiet stir of curiosity that she didn't want to acknowledge. She crossed her arms, trying to mask it. That's a bold claim, Illyra said, trying to keep her tone as neutral as possible. It's the truth, Ethan replied, meeting her gaze with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. The silence that followed hung heavily between them. Illyra couldn't remember the last time she had been so intrigued by someone, human or otherwise. And yet, she was still determined not to let her emotions cloud her judgment. She had a duty to her people, to Lythris. She could not afford to let a human diplomat change that. Queen Xylira, sensing the tension in the air, spoke up. Perhaps it would be wise for you two to spend some time together. Get to know one another. A personal understanding may help bridge the gap between our two worlds. Illyra didn't answer at first. The thought of spending more time with Ethan, someone who represented everything she had been taught to view as inferior, seemed impossible. But the Queen's words were firm, and Illyra knew she had little choice in the matter. This wasn't just about her personal feelings, it was about Lythris' future. With a sigh, Illyra turned to Ethan. Fine, we'll meet tomorrow. But understand this marriage is not something I'm agreeing to. Not yet, Ethan nodded, his expression unchanging. I wouldn't expect you to, Princess. But perhaps, after we spend some time together, you'll see things from a different perspective. Illyra couldn't help but feel a slight annoyance at how calm he was. How could he stand there, so composed, as if this was just another negotiation? But there was something in his eyes, something that made her wonder if he truly believed what he was saying, or if he was just playing a role. As Ethan left the room, Illyra's mind was left in turmoil. She wasn't ready to face the truth that her mother's plan might have merit. She wasn't ready to admit that humans could possess strength and resilience, that even the Litharians hadn't fully understood. The next morning, Illyra reluctantly met with Ethan in the palace garden, a place she had always found peace in. The air was cool and the flowers bloomed brightly, but today, the colors felt muted, as if they were reflecting her mood. Ethan was already there, sitting on a stone bench, watching the flowing water of the nearby stream. He stood when he saw her approach, offering her a polite but reserved smile. Princess Illyra, he said, his voice calm. I'm glad you agreed to meet with me. Illyra didn't sit. She wasn't sure how to feel about this meeting, but she couldn't allow herself to show weakness. Not yet. We need to get this over with, Ambassador, she said, her tone sharp. Ethan raised an eyebrow. I'm not here to make things difficult for you, Princess. I'm here to talk, to understand one another. Illyra studied him for a moment. She didn't trust him, but something in her made her curious. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself, it was different from any human she had ever met. Maybe that's what bothered her the most. I still don't understand why this is happening, Illyra said quietly. Why do we need this alliance? Why do I need to marry a human? Ethan looked at her thoughtfully before answering. Because, Princess, humans don't give up. We fight for what matters, no matter how impossible it seems. Illyra didn't answer. She was unsure of what to say. She had spent her life believing that her people were the pinnacle of civilization. And now, here was this human, telling her that survival didn't come from strength alone, it came from resilience. From never giving up, maybe, just maybe, there was more to humanity than she had ever been taught to believe. The days that followed the meeting in the garden were tense. Princess Illyra kept her distance from Ethan, keeping her conversations with him brief and formal. Despite the respect he had earned during their time together, Illyra remained resolute in her belief that her mother's plan was misguided. Humans, to her, were still too unpredictable, too wild. Yet, as much as she tried to push him away, Ethan's calm, unwavering nature had begun to eat away at her resistance. He had a quiet strength, a kind of certainty that unsettled her. No matter how harsh her words were, no matter how much she distanced herself from him, he always responded with understanding and patience. On the third day after their meeting in the garden, Illyra was summoned to the royal council room. Her mother, along with several high-ranking officials, was waiting for her, their faces grim. "Illyra, we have a problem," Queen Illyra began, her voice filled with concern. "The situation with the humans is becoming more complicated than we anticipated." Illyra's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, Mother?" Her mother's gaze shifted to the screen on the far wall, where a series of flashing images appeared. The images were of alien ships, ones that Illyra didn't recognize. Their designs were sleek and menacing, their colors dark and foreboding. "These ships belong to a group of warlords from the Rithar Empire," the Queen explained. "They've been watching our alliance with Earth closely. They see the growing strength of humanity and fear what it could mean for their control over the galaxy." Illyra frowned. "So they're planning an attack?" "Exactly," her mother said. "They know that an alliance between Lithurus and Earth would shift the balance of power in the galaxy. We've been in peace for so long, we've forgotten what it's like to fight for survival. The Rithar Empire intends to take advantage of this vulnerability." Illyra stood still, her mind racing. This was worse than she had imagined. An attack from the Rithar warlords could destroy everything her people had worked for. Lithurus wasn't prepared for a full-scale war. And now, with the growing tension between her and the human ambassador, there was little trust between the two sides. But then something unexpected happened. Her mother turned to Ethan, who had entered the room quietly, standing at the back. "We need your help, Ambassador," Queen Illyra said, her voice urgent. "The Rithar Empire's warlords are skilled in strategy and combat. We need your knowledge of human tactics to help us defend Lithurus." Ethan nodded, his expression calm. "I've been expecting this," he said. "The Rithar Empire won't back down easily. But they are predictable. They believe that strength alone will win the battle. What they don't understand is that humans are masters of strategy, not just brute force." Illyra's eyes widened. This was something she hadn't expected. Could a human really help them in a battle? She had always thought of humans as reckless, driven by emotion rather than reason. But Ethan's calm confidence gave her pause. "I have a few ideas," Ethan continued, "but I'll need access to your communication systems and your military data. The Rithar will likely attack within the next 2 days, and we need to be ready." Illyra couldn't help but feel a spark of admiration for Ethan's quick thinking. Despite all the differences between their people, he seemed more capable of handling the situation than most of her advisors. She had to admit it, perhaps humanity did have something to offer after all. Her mother gave a nod of approval. "Very well, Ambassador. You'll have what you need. We trust you to help us secure our future." With the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders, Illyra turned to Ethan. "How do you plan to stop them?" Ethan paused for a moment, his eyes scanning the data on the screen. "It's not about stopping them with force. That's what they expect. We need to outsmart them. The Rithar rely on their overwhelming numbers. But they have weaknesses. Weaknesses that humanity is particularly skilled at exploiting." Illyra was impressed by his calm approach. Ethan wasn't panicking, even though they were facing an uncertain future. It was as if he had seen worse, dealt with tougher situations before. "Then we'll do it your way," Illyra said, her voice steady. "But you need to work with my commanders. We'll need to combine your human strategies with our technology." Ethan smiled faintly. "Of course, Princess. That's the only way this will work." The following day, Illyra found herself in the command center, sitting alongside Ethan, her military leaders, and her mother. The air was thick with tension as they reviewed the Rithar's known movements. and their likely attack routes. It was clear that the warlords were preparing for an invasion, and every minute spent planning was crucial. Ethan's strategy was simple but effective. He suggested using decoys to confuse the Rithar ships, drawing them into a trap where they would be vulnerable. He also recommended using their human-made stealth technology to move their forces unseen, positioning them for an ambush. Illyra couldn't deny the brilliance of his plan. It was different from the typical methods Litharians used, but it might just work. As they worked together, Illyra began to notice how Ethan's presence had a calming effect on everyone around him. The soldiers listened to him, trusted him, and followed his orders without question. Even Illyra, who had once doubted his abilities, found herself impressed by his leadership. It wasn't just his strategies that made Ethan so effective. It was his understanding of human resilience. He knew that when things went wrong, when all hope seemed lost, humans would rise up and fight. It wasn't about having the most advanced weapons or the biggest armies. It was about refusing to give up, no matter the odds. As the final preparations were made, Illyra couldn't help but feel a shift inside her. This wasn't just about a political marriage anymore. This was about something far bigger. Her people, Litharis, were in danger, and the only way to ensure their survival was to trust this human, the very one she had been so reluctant to accept. But as she watched Ethan lead the final strategy briefing, her doubts began to fade. She still didn't know if she could marry him. But one thing was becoming clear. Ethan was no ordinary human. He was a leader, a warrior in his own right. And for the first time, Illyra saw the strength in humanity she had always been too proud to recognize. The day of the battle arrived quickly. Princess Illyra stood on the balcony of the royal palace, looking out over the battlefield below. The air was thick with the hum of preparation, soldiers rushing to their posts, ships launching from their hangars, and the flashing lights of the command center in the distance. Everything was in motion, and yet, Illyra couldn't shake the sense of unease that gripped her chest. It was the first time in her life that she felt truly uncertain. She had been trained for battle, prepared for leadership, but never for something like this, a war where the future of her people and their survival rested on the shoulders of someone she had once underestimated. Beside her, Ethan stood silently, his eyes focused on the battlefield as well. The human had been by her side throughout the entire planning process. He wasn't just a diplomat anymore. He had become a true ally. His insights into the Rithar tactics had been crucial, and his calm presence had steadied the nervous officers and soldiers alike. "Are we ready?" Illyra asked, turning to him. She didn't mean for it to sound like a test, but it did. Ethan nodded, his face serious but not anxious. "Yes, we've set the traps, and the decoys are in place. The Rithar will take the bait. Once they're in position, we'll strike." Illyra looked at him, her mind full of conflicting emotions. How had this human managed to change her opinion so quickly? He was still, to her, the symbol of everything she had once dismissed. But now, he was the one she trusted to help save her people. "You've done more for us than I thought possible," she said quietly, almost to herself. I didn't expect you to be so capable." Ethan turned to look at her, his expression softening slightly. "I don't need your praise, Princess. I'm here because I believe in the strength of your people, and because I believe that humans and Litharians can create something stronger together than we could ever do apart." Illyra swallowed, taken aback by the sincerity in his words. "You're right. I was wrong about you and about humans in general." Ethan gave a small smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." Illyra nodded, feeling an unfamiliar weight in her chest. The truth was, she didn't just respect Ethan now, there was something else there. Something she couldn't quite name. They had worked side by side for hours, days even, planning and strategizing. And in that time, she had seen a side of him that few others ever would. Ethan was more than just an ambassador. He was a warrior, a thinker, a leader. And the idea of not trusting him felt almost impossible now. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud noise from below, the sound of military ships launching into the sky. The time had come. The attack was about to begin, Illyra took a deep breath and straightened her posture, returning to her role as future queen of Lythris. She couldn't afford to let her emotions take over now. The lives of her people depended on this strategy succeeding. But as she turned to Ethan, she couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. He had become more than just a political tool. He had become someone she relied on. "Let's get to the command center," Illyra said, her voice firm now. "It's time to defend our home." In the command center, the atmosphere was tense. Officers were shouting orders, soldiers were preparing for battle. And the hum of the communication system filled the air with the urgent need to act quickly. Illyra walked to her place at the main console, her hand steady despite the rising anxiety in her chest. She had never been more aware of the weight of the crown she would one day wear. Ethan was already at a console across from her, his face illuminated by the soft blue light of the monitors. His concentration was absolute, his fingers moving over the controls with precision. Illyra couldn't help but watch him for a moment, noticing how natural he seemed in this environment. He was more than just a human ambassador. In that moment, he was a part of Lythris' defense. The first signals came through the Rithar ships were approaching. "Ready," Ethan said calmly, not looking away from the screen. "They're taking the bait." Illyra's breath caught in her throat. This was it. The fate of Lythris and Earth rested on the plan they had put into motion. She turned to the officers beside her, her voice strong. "Initiate the ambush." "Ambush initiated," an officer shouted. The lights in the command center flickered as the shipyards around Lythris activated their stealth technology, hiding their true positions from the enemy's sensors. The decoy ships were now in motion, drawing the Rithar forces away from their intended target. Illyra's heart raced as the situation unfolded. Ethan's strategy was working. The Rithar had taken the bait, and now the real forces of Lythris and Earth would strike. But there was still the danger that the warlords could turn things around if they weren't careful. "Now," Ethan said quietly, his voice low but filled with authority. "Now," Illyra echoed, turning to her mother. Queen Xylira nodded and sent the order to launch the counterattack. The ships around Lythris surged forward, moving with surprising speed, their weapons ready to strike. The Rithar, caught off guard, scrambled to reposition their ships. But it was too late. Lytharian and human forces combined in a well-coordinated strike, overwhelming the Rithar forces. The battle was fierce, but it was clear that the Rithar were outmatched. Their numbers didn't guarantee victory this time. The alliance between Lythris and Earth had proven to be stronger than anyone had expected. From her station, Illyra could see the battle unfolding on the screens. But she wasn't focused on the fighting. Her eyes were on Ethan, who stood by his console, issuing orders to the human forces with precision and calm. The respect she had felt for him earlier now bloomed into something more. In this moment, Ethan wasn't just a human diplomat, he was her equal, her partner in this battle. His calm confidence had steadied her, and now, together, they were watching their plan unfold. As the final Rithar ships were disabled and the battle began to wind down, Illyra let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. They had done it. The Rithar had been defeated, and Lythris was safe for now. She turned to Ethan, her voice full of awe. "We did it. You did it." Ethan finally looked up from the console, his face breaking into a tired but genuine smile. "We did it, Princess." Illyra felt a wave of relief flood over her. But there was something else, to something deeper. She wasn't sure what it was yet, but she knew one thing. The human standing beside her had changed everything. The strength, the courage, and the resilience she had once dismissed were all there in front of her. And Ethan, and it was no longer something she could ignore. Later that night, after the celebrations had calmed and the palace returned to a state of normalcy, Illyra found herself walking in the garden once more. It was a peaceful place, and it helped clear her mind. As she walked, she heard the soft crunch of footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw Ethan approaching, his face still tired from the battle, but softened by the quiet peace of the evening. "You fought well today," Illyra said, her voice quiet but sincere. Ethan stopped beside her, looking out over the peaceful garden. "We all did. This victory belongs to everyone, Litharians and humans alike." Illyra nodded, her gaze drifting to the stars above. I think I finally understand. Ethan glanced at her, waiting. I was wrong, Alira continued, her voice steady but filled with realization. I judged your people too harshly, but I see now that humanity's strength isn't just about fighting, it's about never giving up, about working together. Ethan's expression softened. It's the same for all of us. We may be different, but that doesn't mean we can't learn from each other. Alira turned to him, her eyes meeting his. Maybe we can build something more than just an alliance. Maybe we can build a future. Ethan's smile was small but genuine. I think that's exactly what we're doing. And for the first time, Alira believed him. The sun was setting over the grand palace of Lythris, casting long shadows across the city below. Princess Alira stood on the balcony, gazing out at the peaceful horizon. The events of the past week still felt surreal to her. The battle had been fierce, but it was over now. Lythris was safe, the Rithar Empire defeated for the time being. The alliance between her people and the humans had been tested, and it had survived. Alira took a deep breath, feeling the cool breeze against her skin. It was strange how much had changed in such a short time. When Ethan had first arrived, she had viewed him with skepticism, almost disdain. Yet now, as she stood here reflecting on everything that had happened, she realized how much he had become a part of her life. You're thinking too much, a familiar voice said from behind her. Alira turned to see Ethan walking toward her, his face showing the signs of exhaustion, but also a quiet satisfaction. The battle was won, but the true victory, Alira had come to understand. Laying what they had built together, I'm just trying to understand everything that's happened. Alira replied, her voice thoughtful. This alliance, our victory, I never imagined it would turn out like this. Ethan leaned against the balcony railing, his gaze following hers to the distant horizon. No one could have predicted how it would all unfold. But you and your people showed incredible strength. You adapted, you learned, and that's why we won. Alira looked at him, her eyes searching his face for something she couldn't quite name. And you showed me something I never saw in humans. You didn't just rely on technology or brute force. You relied on something more, something deeper. Ethan smiled, but it was a tired smile, one that carried the weight of everything they had been through. I've seen enough of the galaxy to know that survival isn't about having the biggest army or the most advanced technology. It's about having the will to fight when everything else seems lost. And that's something humans understand. But it's not just us. It's you too, Alira. You've learned to trust when it mattered most. Alira looked down at her hands, the weight of his words settling in. I never thought I'd say this, but I think I was wrong about your people. I thought you were too unpredictable, too wild. But now I see that humanity's strength isn't just in what you can do with your hands or your weapons. It's in what you can do with your heart. Ethan's expression softened, his eyes meeting hers with an understanding that made her heart race. It's the same for all of us, he said quietly. Litharians are incredibly strong, but you've taught me something too. You've taught me that strength isn't just about standing tall in the face of danger. It's about opening your heart, even when it's hard, even when it feels like it might break. Alira felt a lump form in her throat, but she swallowed it down. Maybe that's why this alliance works. Because we're learning from each other, humans and Litharians, not just in strategy or strength, but in who we are as people. Ethan's smile deepened. Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, this is the beginning of something more than just an alliance. Alira's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what she was feeling, but it was something deep, something she hadn't expected. She had always been the one in control, the future queen of Lythris. But now, in Ethan's presence, she felt uncertain, but not in a bad way. It was a kind of uncertainty that held the possibility of something new, something she wasn't sure she was ready for, but couldn't deny. I think you're right, Alira said quietly, turning her gaze back to the horizon. This is just the beginning. There was a long silence between them, one filled with unspoken words and emotions that neither of them could fully express. Alira knew the battle was won, but what came next was just as important. Her people and the humans had fought together, side by side. They had shared their strengths and weaknesses, and in doing so, they had forged a bond that neither side could have achieved alone. Illyra had always thought her life was already written. She was the future queen of Lythris, destined to rule. But now, the future seemed less certain. And yet, for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it, because she knew that whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. As the night settled in, the stars began to appear in the sky, one by one. Illyra felt a warmth inside her, a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The alliance between her people and Earth was only the beginning, and perhaps so was her future with Ethan. The next morning, the atmosphere in the palace was one of quiet celebration. The battle was over, but the true work was just beginning. Illyra's people and the humans would have to rebuild together, strengthening their alliance, learning from one another, and adapting to the new world they were creating. Ethan had been given a special place in the celebrations, no longer just an ambassador, but a hero in his own right. The Litharians had come to see him not just as a human, but as someone who had fought for their survival, someone who had earned their respect. Illyra watched him from across the room, surrounded by both humans and Litharians, all smiling, laughing, and talking about the future. It was strange seeing him in this light. The man she had once thought of as nothing more than a political tool had become something more, something she couldn't ignore, something she didn't want to ignore. As the evening wore on, Illyra found herself walking toward Ethan, her heart pounding in her chest. He turned when he saw her approach, a small smile forming on his lips. "Princess Illyra," he said, his voice warm but with a hint of exhaustion. "I didn't expect to see you here." Illyra smiled, feeling a strange sense of calm as she spoke. "I think I'm finally starting to understand what you meant. About survival, about strength, and about what it means to build something together." Ethan's eyes softened. "It's not just about what we do, Illyra. It's about what we choose to become. We can choose to be more than just allies. We can choose to be partners." In every sense of the word, Illyra's heart raced as she met his gaze. She wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear: she no longer saw him as just a human ambassador. He was someone she trusted, someone she admired, someone she was willing to build a future with. As they stood there, the noise of the celebration around them seemed to fade. The world outside had become distant, and in this moment, all that mattered was what lay ahead. Together,